So first of all, thank you for taking the time to answer the questions that everybody from the Mayersche fan site have asked us to ask you. First off, you're quite a shooting star among young authors. Your popularity exploded within such a short time span. Your book sold over 20 million copies worldwide. Have you ever tried to imagine what that would look like?
Actually, we're over 30 million copies
already,
right now.
Okay.
No, I never imagined that this would happen. When I was writing Eragon, I was writing it for my own enjoyment, and I thought at the most maybe my family would read the book, maybe a few friends. I never thought that people all around the world, here in Germany, would actually be reading these books. So it's very gratifying to know that so many people enjoy this series, and I'm very grateful that enough people do like the books that it's allowed me to do what I love to do, which is telling stories.
Yeah. That pretty much would answer then the second one. Between your second and third novel, you experienced what, writer's block? Is it because you felt pressure about the huge amount of fans that had actually come during that first two books?
I wouldn't say it was really writer's block. I actually experienced a little bit more of that with the second book, just because there was a big shift from writing a book that was just for myself, and I didn't think it was ever going to be published, to writing a book where I knew there was an audience, and I knew that there were expectations, from the readers and for myself and for everyone I knew. So that was definitely a change in experience. The biggest difference I experienced with the third book was that I expected the third book to be the last book. And it just kept getting longer. Yes, and in fact, I sometimes describe my plotting as and then, and then, and then.
So all the ideas just kept on going.
Well, the story was the same. I didn't just build up the story to make it 4 books. What happened was that the last part of the story, which I always thought would fit into 1 book, when it came time to actually write it, I started writing the third book, and I got further and further into it. And I was thinking, oh, this is great, but I've written hundreds of pages, and I still don't feel as if I'm any closer to the end of this book. And it was at that point I realized that I had to split it up, or else the last book was going to be 2,000 pages long, which, as both a writer and as a reader, I draw the line at 1,000 pages. Anything after 1,000 pages just kind of hurts, as a writer and as a reader.
That's true. And they get heavier though, too.
And they get heavier. And of course, when translated to German, they get even bigger.
They do?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Well, German's rather notorious for very long words.
Okay.
And I believe that most of my books, when translated into German, are at least 100 pages longer. Sometimes longer. So
that's interesting.
Yes, so if I wrote a 1,000-page book in English, it would probably be 1,200 pages in German.
I guess we just have more words for, well, 1 word in English.
Or the words themselves are a little longer. And, neither approach is better or worse. It's just sort of a difference of approach in how the languages handle things. So we're going to stick to you writing. You made New Year's resolutions because you twittered about getting into a new storyline. That wasn't so much New Year's resolution as I have finished my previous project and I'm excited to start something new resolution.
Okay.
I unfortunately don't have time to write when I'm on tour. I'm on my international tour right now, which is quite long, 91 days. So, yes.
But you get to see a lot.
I get to see a lot, and I have a little bit of time off for vacation in that time, so it's not all work.
Okay.
But no, I have lots of stories that I want to tell past the inheritance cycle. Some are fantasy, some aren't. But I'm very excited about all of them, and my hope is that people who have enjoyed the fantasy, who have enjoyed the inheritance cycle, will enjoy my next book even more.
Is it going to be set in the same world as the Eragon books?
No. I'm not going to say exactly what I'm going to do, but definitely it won't be in the same world, just because I spent 13, 14 years thinking and working on Eragon's world and his story. And after that amount of time, I need to try something else. I need to do something new. That said, I have every intention of someday returning to Alagasia and writing a new story at some point. And in fact, I'm sure that readers who have already finished the fourth book will have noticed that there are some questions that I left unanswered.
Yes.
And those are, for the most part, openings for future stories.
So theories will continue in all of the online sites around Eragon. Have you actually peeked into some of those sites to see which wild and crazy theories there are out there?
Not normally, but I do get, I get to hear lots of the theories at the book signings I do. The fans are always coming up and asking me, so is this going to happen, or is this going to happen, or why don't you write about a book, about this in the story? So I have a pretty good idea about what people would like to see in a future book, and I think that some of the guesses are fairly close to what I hope to do someday, but some of them are quite different as well.
Did you actually take your sister's eye color for Angela in your book? That was one of the theories we came across?
Well, the description of the character is based on my sister, so she's very similar. Fortunately, she's been a very good sport about me making her a character in the series. I fully expect if she ever writes a fantasy novel that she'll probably make me a character in her books. So, although I probably won't be quite as interesting as her character. So,
you don't think she's as creative?
I think she's. I think
she's not interesting enough?
I think she's very creative, but I think she's a more interesting person than I am.
Okay, but she's planning on writing something?
I have no idea.
You have no idea.
She is a writer. She's working on some projects of her own, but I wouldn't dare say what she's doing at the moment. So we'll leave that as a surprise. Secret. Yes.
We'll just talk to her like in a year or two.
Hopefully.
Okay. About the movie, a lot of fans were a bit disappointed about it not being very close to the written Eragon stories. Do you understand that they were disappointed, or how did it come across to be so different?
Well, overall, I'm very happy that the movie was made, because very few books are ever made into movies. And I gave as much input as I could into, and also the film, it introduced a lot of new readers to the series, which I think is a good thing. Mm-hmm. I gave as much input as I could throughout the course of making the film. I wasn't making it, but when it was being made. But ultimately, the filmmakers made the version of the story they wanted to make, and I made the version of the story I wanted to make in the books, and everyone's free to enjoy each of them on their own terms. Actually, it's a funny story, because I was going to have a cameo in the movie, and they'd agreed they were going to fly me over to Budapest, where they were filming the movie at the time. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't. It ended up I couldn't do this because I was about to come over to Europe for my to tour with the second book, and came to Germany and many other countries, so the timing didn't work out. But I was going to go to the film set, and I'd asked for this, and they'd agreed for it, that I was going to have a scene in the movie near the end of the movie, in the final battle, where I got my head chopped off on screen by Eragon. And I thought that was just the funniest thing, to get killed on screen by my own character. But
I understand that.
But as I said, it didn't work out. So maybe in a future movie. Actually, and it was only after the fact that I realized that for me to be fighting Eragon, I would have to have dressed up as one of the monsters, the Urgles, in the end of the film. But since I described all the Urgles as being over 6 feet tall and very large, I would have been the smallest of all of them.
All special effects.
Special effects, that's right, movie magic.
Okay. So there are other movies planned?
I hope so. I would very much like to see some more films based off the inheritance cycle. At the moment, that's kind of up to the studio to do what they want with that, but I think that they're great stories and something that would appeal to a lot of people to see in film format, so hopefully we'll see that someday.
Definitely. And you had an interview with Mike McCauley, mm-hmm. and you had talked about a marriage proposal from one of your fans. Is that just about the craziest thing that you have encountered so far?
Far from it, and actually that wasn't the only proposal. I got, I'm not even sure how many I got, 10 or so on the last book tour.
Wow.
No, I've had some crazy things happen on book tour. I was at one event, I had a woman give me an ostrich egg, which she had carved to make it look as if the dragon Saphira was actually hatching out of the egg. I had another woman give me an emu egg, which she'd done the same thing on it, which was kind kind of an odd coincidence. I was once at an event with live sword fighting and a guy dressed up as a centaur,
Wow.
which is an amazing suit. And on this last tour, I had a woman, I was up in Edmonton in Canada, and I had a woman faint during one of my readings. And she claimed, because I went and talked with her, she claimed she had flown to Canada all the way from Australia just for the signing. So
Okay.
I figure that she fainted because of the jet lag, not
Yes.
because of my powerful voice or anything like that.
We'll leave it up to that.
We'll leave it up to that. And I think one of the oddest things I had happen, I was on tour for my third book, Brissinger, and I was in Chicago in the United States, and it was very late at night, and this woman came through the signing line, and on her arm she was carrying a sugar glider. I don't know if you know what a sugar glider is, but they're a marsupial, and they're kind of like a flying squirrel, but they have, you know, the pouch on the belly.
She had a live animal.
A live animal. They're not that big. They're about this big.
Yeah.
They're very, very, very cute. So she comes up to the table, and I look at her, and I say, well, that's a really interesting animal.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind if I pet it? She looks at me, and she says, oh, sure, go right ahead. He loves strangers. He doesn't bite. So I reach out, and I start petting the sugar glider, and it looks up at me, and very cute. And then it takes its hands, because they have hands like a raccoon.
Mm-hmm.
It takes its hands and it wraps its fingers around my finger. And then ever so politely, it just begins to gnaw on my finger. And I was sitting there and there was blood running down my hand. And I was looking at the woman and saying, will you please stop your pet from trying to eat me?
Love bites. Those
Love bites. But I'm kind of glad that it happened because I'm now one of the few people in the world who can say that I have been chewed on by a marsupial. So,
well, you're still heading out to
Australia. That's right. So I'm sure I'll meet many more people there who've been chewed on by marsupials.
Or maybe you'll get a second round.
I hope not.
Okay. And do you have any expectations for the Europe tour so far?
Well, so far it's been an absolutely wonderful tour, sold out events, and I wasn't sure what to expect because it's been 6-some years since I was over here, and I didn't know if there would be more fans or less fans or quite what sort of a reception I would get, but it's been really wonderful. I was in Munich to begin with, and I got to do a little sightseeing there, and now here in Cologne I got to go to the cathedral here and walk around, see all the locks on the bridge, and
okay.
so yeah, it's nice to be here, and I'm sure the rest of the tour, both Europe and elsewhere, will be good.
Well, hopefully.
Hopefully.
No marsupials.
No more. Yeah, no marsupials.
Okay. Well, I think we have just about everything. Thank you again.
You're welcome.
And
Thank you.
We'll see how fast you guys get through the reading, and then you can have a coach in Cologne.
Eragon swept his gaze over the courtyard 2 separate times before he noticed a faint puff of dust rising up the wall of the keep from a foot-wide crack that had appeared beneath the blackened, partially destroyed window where Bloodgarm had killed the magician. As the squeal increased in intensity, Eragon risked lifting one of his hands off his ear to point at the crack. "Look!" he shouted to Arya, who nodded in acknowledgement. He replaced a hand over his ear. Without warning or preamble, the sound stopped.